The night before my engagement, my future husband's mother pulled me aside in the kitchen, away from the others. She slid an old photograph across the counter and whispered, "Do you know her?" I did. And what I said next, no one in that family was prepared for it. My name is Claire Holygram and I am 31 years old. Last Friday night, exactly 12 hours before the biggest celebration of my life, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, Lorraine, pressed an old photograph into my hand that stopped the very breath in my lungs. At that moment, the kitchen was filled with the warm, buttery scent of baking, but my chest felt like it had turned to solid ice. In that photo was the same woman who had destroyed my family 10 years ago. Lorraine lowered her voice to a jagged whisper and asked me, "Do you know her?" I gripped the edges of the photo so hard my fingernails turned white. "Yes, I know her," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "And before this night is over, the whole town is going to know exactly what you're hiding behind this picture." Before I go any further, I want you to take a second to hit that like and subscribe button, but only if this story is really hitting home for you. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every single one of them. Now take me back 8 years to a gray, rain-soaked morning in Richmond, Virginia, when my world first fell apart. My father, Gregory, was a respected forensic accountant in the city. He was the kind of man who believed a person's word was their bond. To him, honesty wasn't just a policy, it was his entire identity. But one morning, the foundation of our lives cracked wide open. He was accused of embezzling $423,000. The evidence they presented was terrifyingly solid. It was so clinical, so well executed, that no one would even listen to his side of the story. The firm that brought the case against him was led by an anonymous, silent partner, whose face was never revealed in the press or the courtroom. Unable to bear the shame and the shock of the betrayal, my father took his own life. My mother shattered into a million pieces. We had to pack up our lives, leaving behind our beautiful 3,200 square foot family home to move into a cramped, drafty apartment on the edge of town. That was the day I made a vow. I promised myself I would find the person who forged my father's signature and dragged his name through the mud. I put myself through school and became a data analyst. I turned my grief into a quiet, burning obsession. I became a hunter of truths hidden behind spreadsheets and encrypted files. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. Then Ben walked into my life. Ben was sweet, attentive, and his family, the Holygrams, were one of the wealthiest names in Portsmouth. His mother, Lorraine, was a woman who never appeared in public without her signature pearls and a smile that looked like it had been painted on with a steady, cold hand. From the start, she made sure I knew I wasn't one of them. She looked at my simple clothes and my quiet demeanor as if I were a smudge on her polished silver. Once, during a formal dinner at their estate, she looked across the table and said, "Claire, it's just so tragic that people from your sort of background can never truly grasp the value of a legacy. You're just lucky Ben chose you." The blood rushed to my ears, hot and pulsing, but I kept my mouth shut. I loved Ben, or at least I thought I did. I thought his love was the shield I needed against the world. The night before our engagement party, Lorraine called me into the kitchen alone. The house was quiet, the staff had been sent home, and the air was thick with the smell of the appetizers being prepped for the next day. She didn't say a word at first. She just slid that photo across the granite countertop. It was a picture of my mother when she was young, vibrant, and smiling. On the back, in my father's unmistakable, neat handwriting, was a note: "Honesty comes at a very high price." Lorraine knew. She had connected the dots and realized exactly whose daughter I was. She thought she could scare me, that she could bully me into running out of town so her family's secret, the fact that she was the one who framed my father, would stay buried in the dark. She leaned in close, the scent of her expensive perfume cloying and suffocating. "If you aren't out of this town by tomorrow morning," she said softly, "I will leak the files that prove your father was a common thief. I'll make sure his name is dragged through the dirt one last time." As soon as I could get away, I went to my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely start the ignition. I called my grandmother, Nadine. She's 82 years old and spent 40 years managing an old bank in Richmond. She's the toughest woman I know. She had always kept a small floor safe that my grandfather had left behind, a box of secrets she'd guarded for years. When I told her what happened, her voice didn't waver. "Claire," she said, "your father gave me a digital drive before he passed. He told me it was only to be opened when you turned 30. He knew this day might come. It contains the records of $680,500 in transactions Lorraine made from her private offshore accounts. My pulse was drumming in my temples. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my small room, fueled by black coffee and a decade of suppressed rage. I organized the files, contacted a lawyer I'd been consulting in secret, and prepared a presentation that Lorraine would never see coming. I wasn't just clearing my father's name anymore. I was tearing down the house she had built on his grave. Just hold on a second. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had your own family or maybe your in-laws try to make you feel small in front of everyone? Have they ever tried to hold your past against you? Tell me about it in the comments. And if you want to know what happened the next morning when Lorraine saw herself on that big screen, stay with me. Hit that like button so I know you're still riding with me on this. The engagement party was held at the Portsmouth Clubhouse. It was a sea of expensive suits, silk dresses, and the clinking of crystal. More than 150 of the town's most influential people were there. Lorraine stood on the stage, looking every bit the grand matriarch in a navy gown. She was giving a speech about family honor and tradition. She was talking about how the Holy Graham family had served this community for generations, her voice dripping with a false, honeyed sincerity. I stood in the corner of the hall, dressed in a white lace dress that felt like a shroud. I had a small remote tucked into the palm of my hand. My heart was a hammer in my chest, but my mind was cold and clear. When Lorraine reached the climax of her speech, looking out over the crowd with a triumphant glint in her eyes, she said, "In this family, we only welcome those whose hands are clean." That was my cue. I pressed the button. The large projector screen behind her, which was supposed to show a slideshow of Ben and me, flickered and changed. Instead of a photo of us on the beach, a bank statement appeared in giant, glowing letters. The room went dead silent. You could see every head in the hall tilt upward. The statement clearly showed the monthly payments of $2,400 that Lorraine had been making to an anonymous hacker. A digital trail used to gain access to my father's work computer a decade ago. Then the audio started. It was a recording my father had managed to capture during a frantic final phone call he'd made to a business associate he thought he could trust. Lorraine's voice boomed through the high-end speakers, unmistakable and sharp. "Gregory is too honest for his own good. He has to be removed from the equation or my shell companies are going to be gutted. Just pin the embezzlement on him. Use the signature stamps. Make it stick." The silence that followed was so heavy you could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Lorraine's face, which had been a flushed, healthy pink from the champagne and the praise, turned a ghastly ash gray. The champagne glass in her hand slipped through her fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor, the shards spraying across her expensive shoes. I looked at Ben. He was staring at the screen, then at his mother with a look of pure, agonizing disbelief. The shame on his face was palpable. When Lorraine reached out to grab his arm, her hand trembling, he recoiled as if she were a snake. He didn't say a word, he just stepped back, away from the lie he'd lived his whole life. Lorraine opened her mouth to speak, to spin another web of deceit, but no words came out. Her own stage, her own hand-picked audience, had become the witness to her total destruction. The police were already waiting outside the clubhouse doors. I'd made sure of that. As the officers walked through the crowd and the handcuffs clicked shut around Lorraine's wrists, I walked up to her. I took that old yellowed photograph out of my clutch and handed it back to her. "You asked me if I knew her," I said, my voice steady and calm, devoid of the shaking that had defined my life for 10 years. "I know her. And I know the truth you tried to bury along with my father. His name is clean now. Yours is the only one left in the dirt." In the weeks that followed, the Holy Graham empire crumbled. The investigation into Lorraine's finances opened a floodgate of corruption. A huge portion of their estate was seized and used as restitution for the victims she had defrauded over the years. I didn't stay to watch the final collapse. I packed my bags and left Portsmouth for good. I bought a small, sturdy farmhouse on the coast of North Carolina, right where the salt air feels like it can wash anything clean. My grandmother, Nadine, moved in with me. We spend our mornings on the porch and our afternoons in the garden. I've planted a row of hydrangeas and oaks, the kind of trees my father always loved. In the evenings, when the sea breeze hits my face and I sit with my grandmother over a pot of tea, I feel something I haven't felt since I was 21 years old. I feel free. The roots of my life were still there, buried under the weight of someone else's crimes. I just had to clear away the dead weight so I could finally breathe in the light. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I really mean that. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to set hard boundaries with your family? What was that experience like for you? I read every comment. And check the link in the description for another story I think you really need to hear. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.